Hi everyone. So this is a look at the Asch conformity experiment and the Muzak business that tended to look at human behavior in a rather profiteering, cynical manner with regard to music. And if the findings are as effective as it seems they are with respect to music being able to influence our behavior, and with conformity also able to influence our behavior, then why don't we look at these in a new way? With regard to the conformity experiment, it's fairly self-explanatory. I did discuss it on the audio upload. Essentially, during the 1960s, they were looking at conformity behavior. What would it take to assert your own viewpoint when a crowd of people, even as small a crowd of people as 5 other people, were together in a room and each person gave a similar answer except for you. And your answer would be correct, but you would be socially pressured to give a different answer. So that's the first thing to look at. And if you haven't yet seen the Asch experiment, that should be on one of the links. Please do look at it now. It'll be in our clickable either below, or you can also see it in our course. The second example is having to do with Muzak. Muzak was a company that found that human behavior could be, in terms of tempo, increased in speed when it came to shopping, or slow down with respect to speed when it came to shopping if the music was cueing us. So subconsciously we would be directed to either shop more slowly during slow hours, off-peak hours, and shop more quickly during on-peak hours where they wanted to move people through the store more quickly. So let's look at these 2 aspects in 2 different ways in this video. Thanks so much. In science, the same finding can be interpreted or reinterpreted in different ways. It can have meaning that can help us to understand something in a certain way, but also be used in a different way. So the idea of how a finding can be reinterpreted is guiding this little video. As you'll notice, I'm referring to Asch and Muzak. Asch here and Muzak here. The Asch is a famous conformity experiment, what's called conformity experiments. There were a number of these in the 1960s. And Muzak is a company that used music to assist companies that have big box stores or large food chains to pump music through the speakers so that it would influence shopping behavior. Both of these have different aspects that we can consider in different ways, just like science can be interpreted in different ways. So you will have had to have read my blurb on my little 1 or 2 page piece on Muzak, and you will have had to see the 4-minute video on the Asch conformity experiment in order for what we're seeing here to make sense. So please pause the video here and go and watch the Asch conformity experiment. You'll have the link, and also read my 2-page piece on Muzak, how music for profit was used. And there's also a couple extra articles on Muzak there for you if you're interested. I'll just wait for you to pause the video and then come back. Okay, great. So if you're back having watched those, then you are enlightened. You've seen how one person in the Asch conformity, if they're able to write down their response, they're that much more likely, I mean quite a significant percentage, that much more likely to write down their honest response, because they don't have to be having fear of reprisal of the social, let's say, dislike from the rest of the group. Also, remember that if there's one other person among the others in the same experiment who is, we call a confederate, somebody who is taking the same decision as you would, okay? All you need is one other person to agree with you to make you feel empowered to speak up and speak your mind. This is a fascinating aspect of human psychology. All you need is one other person to be with you in order to feel empowered enough to have a voice. Whereas if you're alone in a situation, you might find that you don't have that voice to be empowered with. It's been studied quite a bit. If any of you have studied a course in psychology, I'm sure you're familiar with this to some extent. But I do want to look at it in a slightly different way. So with the Asch conformity experiment, they find points here to discuss the negativities of conformity, the problems of conformity, the pressures of conformity. This finding can be interpreted in a different way. It can be reinterpreted. If you have one other person in your camp, you have the psychological and social support to go ahead with something. I'll just say it again. The same aspect of conformity where you feel empowered with one other person to say your truth, to speak your truth, to speak your mind, gives you the psychological and social support to actually go ahead and go on with your dream, with your correct answer, with your response, saying who you are, speaking up, speaking your truth. Okay, put that on the shelf for a moment, okay, a little bookshelf. Shelf number 1 has the Asch conformity. Here's another way of looking at it. The conformity, what we learned through this experiment is that if there's one other person, we have the social support to go ahead. Secondly, with Muzak, we learned through the studies in Muzak, and the company certainly learned by hiring musical engineers and by hiring all kinds of different types of researchers, that behavior, human behavior, can be psychologically influenced by music. At the same time, we are susceptible to music. We go to a store, we don't have a choice in the matter where the music is being played or not. It's coming through the loudspeaker. We have to pick up, milk and vegetables or whatever we're having. If you're a vegan, okay, not milk, you're picking up some other substitute perhaps. But in any case, you're picking up food. You don't have time to think about going into the ceiling or asking the manager to stop the speaker. You are simply susceptible to whatever music is being played. And go ahead, try not to listen. You can have earbuds in, and that could help you. But essentially, music is being played there to influence your behavior. And yes, that's the case. That's been borne out to be true. It profited the company Muzak, who put together these playlists. It certainly helped these food companies and large box stores to profit. Yes, and these findings can be interpreted and redirected to understand that if we use music for our own human health, it can have an impact. It can have an impact economically, socioeconomically. Certainly, it can have an influence medically if, again, the analgesic topic, if less pain medication is influencing our body and music is helping us to experience less pain, that is costing the hospital less money. It's costing, of course, big pharma's maybe making less money, but the fact is we're not compromising our health. We're able to take less medication than we would otherwise. So both of these have something similar in that your findings can be interpreted or reinterpreted, or misinterpreted, of course, in different ways. And I just wanted to say that this needs to be in our awareness as we're exploring these findings and their significance. Okay? Even though you might think the finding you have points to one thing, it might actually be pointing to something else. So keep in mind, there's different ways to interpret what your data results might be. And certainly, if we know, one of the big points I want to make is, if we know that music does influence our behavior, that we are influenced by music, that we're susceptible to music, then it's incumbent upon us to look at how music then influences our health, and not just, if health can be considered to be a profit, then let's look at that profit margin. Okay? So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. And we'll see you in the next video or the next audio recording. Thank you.